And Dr. Laura Hansen of Be the First Step, and we're here tonight to talk to you on our third webinar about epigenetics, and we are happy that you're here with us, so let's get started.
I'm going to talk to you tonight about epigenetics. This is probably one of my favorite topics because when you really dive into it, you really begin to start understanding why there are so many things going on today with our health. So as it relates to children, one of the things where my mind got started in this was I started to notice this pattern when I was looking at the histories of the children that I would be assessing. And I started to notice that there were things that were going on with mom and with dad prior to conception and then during the pregnancy. And you started to see a pattern that the more that the parents had certain things in their background, then it also meant that there was a higher risk for their child. So in being a chiropractor, one of the things that I noticed early on is there are a lot of pre-made forms, and you get some pieces of information and then you're supposed to take off from there. One of the things that I've been trying to teach about for a very long time, you can't give the history to a form. This is everything about the patient. So what we learn from the history is really what's going to guide us on what we're going to examine. We should already know what is going on with that patient by the time we get done doing the history interview. Your examination just validates it. That's all it does. And it helps you explore any differential diagnosis. So over time, I gave up using any kind of form and I created very elaborate history-taking forms. And in the beginning, it was a very long-winded experience that by today, I've really been able to streamline, but I wouldn't take away those years because what I learned has really made me the type of practitioner that I am today. And now the form really is very concise and it goes completely through what mom was going through prior to the pregnancy and then what events took place during the pregnancy. Most women today feel like if they're able to birth their baby that they had a natural delivery. And the first question I will always turn around and say, what's a natural delivery? Because natural for some is not necessarily natural. A natural delivery is without any interference whatsoever. So if there's Pitocin, that is synthetic oxytocin, which has a great stressor on the neurohypophyseal stem of the endocrine system of your baby. So that oxytocin is actually part of the brain chemistry that is made by cholesterol. I'm going to grab that and I apologize. I'm not going to answer it.
So Dr. Laura will continue to discuss this and then we'll talk about how this relates to education as well.
So when you have too much oxytocin in the blood, then it's going to change how things are working. And one of the things that has become so evident to me is there is about 99% of the children that I take care of that actually have low cholesterol. So this is the idea behind epigenetics. If I start to see patterns laid out in that history, then I begin to act on, well, I need to look at this, I need to look at that. Now, you might be sitting there going, what do you mean low cholesterol? Well, for 40, maybe 45, 50 years, we've been driving cholesterol down. And we have very, very obscure numbers that we are saying is normal. In fact, if you do a cholesterol screening at a traditional lab, you're going to see that they're saying that 100 to 169 milligrams per deciliter is a healthy cholesterol, and it's not. You could look up a great documentary called Statin Nation. We are starting to see the tables turned on this from the medical community. I myself have been looking at this for nearly 15 years now. And one of the telltale signs of low cholesterol is failure to gain language skills. Cholesterol is fat. You need fat, especially as a baby. So if mom's diet has been driving down fat, if mom's cholesterol is low, baby's cholesterol is low, and there isn't the raw material to make the connections. And that's only one element. So what epigenetics really means is that the word epi, E-P-I, means that it acts upon the gene. So that means whatever's going on inside of the environment, whether it be the inside of the body or the outside of the body, it plays a part in the expression of a gene. Today, we are bombarded with so many things internally. I don't know what kind of diet that you are using, but you know, I just had a conversation with an individual today who was having some form of a stressor going on. And one of the first recommendations that was made is do a cleanse. You know, that's not enough information to make that determination. We're acting and jumping way too fast. And when somebody is actually going through a stressor, when you go and try to clean something out, you could actually really raise the body burden, and you have these blood barriers in your body that you begin to leak toxins from your gut to your brain to your respiratory centers. So it's very important to lay down a path. And that's what we do when we look at families. We want to get that history. We want to get that detail. We want to see where those markers are that are possibly suggesting that there could have been some epigenetic changes. So if moms have things in their history like fatigue, easily stressed, can't fall asleep easily, you're woken up in the middle of the night, if you have cravings, if you don't have drive or motivation, if you have constipation, diarrhea, if you have dry skin, if you're losing the last 1/3 of your eyebrow, if you're losing hair on the lower ends of your leg and your skin is dry, if you are not able to handle day in, day out tasks, those are all kinds of things that begin to suggest that mom's endocrine system and mom's adrenals are not functioning at 100%. So if you're not functioning at 100%, when you go and conceive a baby during this time, you are only able to pass on, that's the genetic part, you're only able to pass on. Let's say you're at 75% function. Now, if that baby receives your 75, you get further depleted. Now that baby, depending upon what that baby's history is, now they've got their own genetics. Now they've got their own things playing upon their genes, and things can begin to shift. So now if we're in that pregnancy, maybe mom suffered a loss, and a loss can be literally that somebody in your family passes away. Maybe you're doing this on your own. Maybe you lost a job. Maybe you lost the future plans. And that is very hard on the female emotional volatility. That plays a part. Maybe you're not really feeling like you can exercise. Maybe you're really having trouble vomiting all the time, and you're not handling the changes that are going on in your body. That becomes a stressor. Maybe you're running 24/7. These stressors that you go through during your pregnancy have an enormous impact on your developing baby. In fact, when mom's adrenal system is tired and fatigued, she will actually how we are approaching children. This is a taste of where we're going with our summit. And our summit is going to present detailed information about all of these areas that we are discussing. So the day that we're on the epigenetics, we're going to dive in and we're going to discuss these pathways so people really begin to understand how things can get changed. Our traditional healthcare system looks at part and parcel. We are looking at the entire you. We are looking at the entirety of your child. We are looking at the entirety of you as a couple. We are looking at everything because in today, this is all we can do to try to change the trajectory of what is going on and why we are seeing so many children, 1 in 6, having some kind of altered problem. So this is a very big part. One of the most common areas that I'm seeing over and over is an increase in artificial fertilization. This is a huge area. That is a red flag. If you are not able to conceive a baby on your own, then that is telling you that your endocrine system is not functioning at the level that it needs to function. Now, please, my goal here is not to make anybody feel guilty. I can completely understand as a woman that you would want a baby, and if you couldn't make it happen for yourself, that you are going to do everything you possibly could. And you still may decide to do something like that. But please allow us to educate you on what the ramifications may be, what outcomes you may have to be ready to handle. I can't begin to tell you some of the cases that I have handled over the years where a woman, a young woman, unable to conceive, had artificial fertilization methods and literally conceived, and usually it's multiple births. And she did. She had a set of twins. And during the pregnancy, I don't know how in the world this was missed, but the second twin laid lethargic in her belly, in her womb. And so if a baby isn't moving, a baby isn't creating neurogenesis. So when the twins were delivered, the first twin was wonderful, plump, happy, ready to go. The second was not. He actually had a genetic defect in the realm of muscular dystrophy that caused his birth to be an emergency. Now, this didn't end there. This mother had to be pulled away from her first baby and had to tend to the emergency needs of the second one. And this particular situation, it broke my heart, but I really could understand. There's no judgment here whatsoever. We are very strong Christian women, and we're here to serve, not judge. But this woman had to really deal with some very difficult emotions where she felt that she was taken away from the first baby and had to only pay attention to the second. And the second was one emergency after the other, and she missed all those early days. And it broke her heart. And she really had a very, very deep struggle. Now, I'm very happy to report that today she has really pulled herself back together, and she really went in a direction to try to restore her own health. And her boys, one has developed as you would expect. The other one still has struggles, but he's made some great changes. So the point of this is that our only option? No, it's not. If we were to take a step back and really look at our health prior to conception, we would be able to change so many things. Because people, every time I talk to them in 15 years solid of looking at these cases one after one, none of these people realized that they could do something like what I'm suggesting. You can get functional labs that will actually identify what's going on in your physiology, give yourself space and time to get restorative health going on, and then conceive. Now, if you've already had a baby and you're attracted to our webinars because you've got a baby that needs help, well, this is why we're here. We serve children, we serve parents, we serve families, we serve couples. We have the answer to help you get resolution to developmental delay and restore family life, because that is the other thing that's happening. It isn't just the life of the child. It isn't just the life of mom. It's the family. The family is being ripped apart because people are having to run everywhere to get help. And we've got to narrow that approach. And that's what Donna and I believe in.
Mm-hmm. So how does this translate to education? Let's talk about education for a few minutes. How does this translate to teachers? How does this translate to what we're seeing in the classrooms? Well, over the past 2 years or so, I've gained an appreciation for how to explore parental history as it pertains to what we're seeing in the classrooms and what we're seeing with children. And what I mean by that is that there are some commonalities that begin to emerge as red flags. By asking the same questions and seeing a pattern of answers,
Right.
they also translate to red flags. Now, excuse me, Dr. Laura, you please, in a few minutes, would you expand some more regarding the explanation on the markers and things like that?
Sure, sure.
But the important thing here is to note that there are clinical markers, and they're being represented in young children, and they seem to influence the way a child develops.
Sure.
Those things then are represented by behaviors in the classroom. Those classroom behaviors need to be identified by skilled, trained teachers who can understand what they're seeing so that early intervention can start
Absolutely,
early.
absolutely.
So I have an increased appreciation that there is a type of impact that results from the health of a mother and father.
Sure.
After adjusting my assessment for education to ask those questions about pregnancy, about labor and delivery, and hearing a pattern of answers starting to emerge. The outcome becomes evident in the babies, what we're seeing in the babies. So if you would like to discuss a little more about the clinical perspective of epigenetics as it relates to what we're talking about, is anything further?
Well, the one thing that I think is really important to understand is we can't have an epidemic that is from a genetic origin. So we're being told all the time right now that autism, and that's only one label. And so we are not limited to autism. We look at autism, ADD, ADHD, PDD, ODD, any type of label this pertains to. But in our culture, autism gets a lot of attention. So autism has been given this title of a genetic mitochondrial defect. So I wanted to explain that because there is a problem down at the cellular level where the mitochondria exists. But why it's doing that is it's happening in many people, and they all don't have the same genes. So you can't have an epidemic from a genetic origin. But again, you see the pattern, like Donna and I are suggesting, that these children, they are in enormous physiological stress. Now, I know the word stress is thrown around like, hey, I'm so stressed out, but it is real. You have a physiological reaction whenever there's stress. And stress can be mechanical, like a clumsy child, poor integration from the lower body to the upper body. It can be chemical. It can be food sensitivities, food allergies, low cholesterol. It can be parasites in the gut, overgrowth of yeast, imbalances of bacteria. It can be emotional. Now, I'm not a counselor, Donna's not a counselor. When we refer to the word emotional, we're talking about the thought process. And I have enormous experience in the thought process. I utilize neuro and biofeedback, and it's all about the thought process. So when we refer to it, we're talking about the thought processes that are going on. And Donna last week was talking about that child that just kind of doesn't ever get to really get involved with the other kids. And she's really going to expand on that topic next week. So be sure and sign up for us again. But what happens when any of those triggers become a full-blown stress reaction in the body? You are designed to handle a little stress. But if that stress runs chronic, it creates what's called a positive feedback loop. We are designed to be a negative feedback loop, like our air conditioner. So if we have the air conditioner set for 70 degrees and it gets up to 71, the air conditioner kicks on, drops the temperature, and once the temperature on the thermostat drops, it will literally shut off the air conditioner. So we are supposed to be like that. If you have stress, you should have your stress chemicals come on and they handle things until the stressor is gone. But what's happening is if these things stay on and on, like I've got belly problems and you're not fixing it, you're not getting me help because I can't really communicate that to you, but just talking like a little pediatric person, or I can't get my feet to go that way, or you know, nobody likes me, I'm just not fitting in. If those are the patterns that are running over and over and over again, then there's literally real estate change going on in the brain. And the longer this goes on, this is who the brain thinks you are. Even a little person, same thing. And the biggest difference is that when this happens to little people, they are opening up their files for the first time, and this is becoming their role model. That's why it's so different in the adult population versus the pediatric. But if this stays on and on, like running in a hamster wheel, you now are changing the biology of the body. And the biology has needs. And you are running out of stuff. And as you run out of stuff, you are becoming damaged down at a cellular level. And that fuel that's needed, running by the Krebs cycle, trying to convert your food, if it is hitting a brick wall, then down at a cellular level where the mitochondria live, absolutely that is going to become damaged, mutated. And that is where we are in extremely ill health. And that part is not only going to happen to a child, that is going to happen to you if your life is running and running and running and you are not defragmenting your own brain.
And you know, we see that in little children in the classroom. We see it in education. We look at pretty much 4 domains. So social would be one of those domains. So we look at the child who can insert himself in or herself into an established play group, who is uncomfortable with other children around him, a child who has difficulty making friends, a child who may be isolated or labeled by his peers. And children do that. They can identify that they don't have the enunciation, the vocabulary to actually call that child a specific name, but they label that child by their actions, by not including them, by having parties or play dates, and that child is never invited. So socially, we see a child who continues to get negative feedback over and over again every time they reach out and they try to make some type of social engagement, but because they're not aware of the appropriate way to do it, they get rebuffed or made fun of or teased or left out. So they don't know how to fix it. So what happens next then is we see that child in frustration. And Dr. Laura, you were talking about stress. Stress turns into distress in the classroom.
Absolutely.
So you have a distressed child. So now academically, this child, their brain may be so wired that they can understand complex concepts. I had a child once who I gave him a plumbing manual, and he was able to read the plumbing manual and explain and understand about elbow joints and how things are connected. I had another child who was a genius with electricity, how it comes, through the walls and the wiring and out of the switch and on. And however, these children had no social skills at all, and couldn't identify the letters in their own name. Couldn't determine at 4 years old between different colors that they were supposed to. They should be able to identify 11 colors at 4 years old. They couldn't draw a self-portrait of themselves. So another area might be language skills. So you have children who have difficulty expressing themselves, and what happens is they express themselves in a different way. They can't do it verbally, so now they become the child who touches another child or takes someone's toys or breaks something because their need to connect is present, but they don't know the right way to do that. And then this is also the child who out on the playground has difficulty keeping up with the other children. They may be awkward, they may not be balanced left to right, they may be stronger in one side of their body than the other. It may be difficult for them to understand and engage in the rules of a game. So they're the kid who does some inappropriate behavior in an effort to participate in the game, and then is not included in the game anymore. So these are some of the things that we see when stress in the physical body turns to distress as a child is trying to fit into the classroom and be successful with their engagements and their interactions. But it doesn't happen, so they try harder and harder, but they do more of the same behavior, which tends to be inappropriate. They get in other people's personal space. They don't understand facial cues. And what happens is they get constant negative feedback, which then turns into a discipline problem where the teacher has to separate them from the other children, call their name all the time, maybe have them sit out of something, which just reinforces to everyone, the other children and themselves, that they're not doing it correctly.
Right. And we look at that this child is considered to have behavior issues. And when we dive deeper into this area, we'll be able to help you understand what you would find in lab work that also initiates these kinds of behaviors, as well as utilizing something like brain mapping that would show you why different areas of the brain, when the frequencies are off, it literally drives this kind of behavior. So this is just a taste that we wanted to share with you for this evening, and we're so glad that you attended. We're gonna just share our contact information with you right now. So if you want to write that down, please feel free. We want you to contact Be the First Step, and our website is www.bethefirststep.com, and our email is bethefirststep2016@gmail.com. And you will see my phone number and Donna's phone number.
And before we close, I'd just like to leave you with four things to think about as school is approaching. Just think about these 4 things. Number 1, 15% of children in your school will have a learning disability or a developmental delay. Number 2, what plan, what strategies, what tools do you have in place to address the needs of these children? Number 3, what's stopping you from implementing proven plans and strategies and utilizing the tools and resources that are available to you through Be the First Step? And number 4, you have access to resources to implement the solutions that your students, your families, and your teachers need. So you can use that email address, you can call us, please reach out to us. We have the solutions that will help the beginning of your school year be more successful.
Have a great night.
Thanks for joining us. Good night.